In being a gentleman, we naturally desire to be competent and capable in the world. As you mature in the world and as the world develops, we want to know that we can handle ourselves in the world. And in order to do that, we have to equip ourselves with skills. A man wants to know that he can act in any situation he's put in and not always react to it. We're going to go into that today. We're going to have some fun talking about 20 skills that we feel every man should know and should be able to practice. Stay tuned.
All right, today's handshake is the manly virtue of perseverance. No matter what you attempt in life, it's going to be difficult. There's going to be moments when you want to quit. There's going to be moments when you second guess yourself. But the virtue of perseverance helps you get through all that and achieve success, lasting success. A lot of people ask me, like, how did you start the Catholic Gentleman and how did it grow into what it is today? And just, you know, people have their own ideas for blogs and websites and social media outreaches that they want to do. And so they ask my advice. And really all I say is, well, of course, you got to have a good idea. But then really you just got to stick with it. And honestly, Catholic Gentleman has just been year after year, week after week of work for 8 years.
That consistency.
And it didn't blow up overnight, but it was a slow, steady growth based on perseverance. Whether you're playing an instrument or learning a sport or, you know, any other skill that a man needs to know, perseverance is absolutely essential to long-term success. And really, it's more than just about practical success. It's about your character. Whether or not you ever become anything big or noteworthy, the fact that you stuck with it says something about you as a man and as a person. You have the character to stick with things and push through the difficulties. And I think that's a skill that, a virtue that we all need to embody.
So before we dive into those 20 skills, please consider subscribing to us on YouTube. If you do so, click that bell icon so you can get all of the notifications whenever we come out with new episodes or new, you know, how a gentleman knows how to and these sort of things. We're also on all podcast players out there. So find us on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it. Go there, subscribe to us as well. We want to keep on providing you with these things. We want to keep on creating memes for our social pages, blogs, and podcasts and episodes to help men grow in holiness. And in order to do that, we need your help. So if you want us to keep on doing these things, if you feel inspired by the work that we've done for the last 8 years and we'll continue to do, we'd appreciate you heading over to Patreon. That's patreon.com/CatholicGentleman. Take a look at some of the fun tiers that we have and the gifts that we're offering and consider donating. Thanks so much. I am excited to get into this. We're going to have some fun today. I know that I have learned a lot and am still learning in my life through humiliation, you know, through my own follies or through just immaturity. And so I can think of many situations that I wish I knew then what I know now, as the saying goes.
Yes. That's one of the benefits of getting older and learning more, is you can look back and pity your former self and wish that you could teach yourself some of the things that you know now. But there's always been, you know, just growing up, there's definitely situations in which as a young man, kind of trying to figure out the world and how it works, you make mistakes.
Yeah.
But you also learn valuable lessons along the way. And that's really how you grow in life. That's how you mature, is by sometimes learning the hard way.
Yeah.
And, you know, but it teaches you things that help you be confident later on. Competence breeds confidence.
That's right.
And the more that we feel we're capable of, the more confident we'll be in any given situation.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. It's not that failure is a bad thing or humiliation is a bad thing,
Oh,
right?
absolutely
We know
not.
that
No.
those are virtues. And I would say that, action and development can be tested in, the furnace of failure.
Absolutely.
And so we can learn from those things. And I'm looking forward to diving into some of our favorite things that we've learned and encourage individuals to learn as well. But before we jump into that, I'd like to make a comment and a thanks for Catholic Match, today's episode sponsor. And unless you've been living under a rock, you know that online dating is the way of the world, for good or for bad. However, in our pursuit in holiness as men, we must always be looking at our faith life, even in the courtship with women. Catholic Match is the largest Catholic online dating app in the world. They are striving for to help men and women find their vocations. So I encourage you to check them out. You can go to catholicmatch.com/thecatholicgentleman to learn more. It's free to get started. They have a free level throughout the whole thing, but we encourage you to check them out. So thanks to Catholic Match, today's episode sponsor. So jumping in to the first skill to learn is to appreciate idioms and aphorisms. Anybody who knows me personally knows that I have a lot of them that I bring to call all the time. And part of me loves the tradition in idioms and in aphorisms.
Wise sayings.
Yeah, sayings and things like that. Like wise sayings that Grandpa used to live by. And we've kind of forgotten those. And I'd like to bring them back. And so you'll see when I'm working some of my employees, I'll say things like, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And as just a reminder that we do things in moderation, right? When we do too much of anything, we're destined for failure or in the spiritual life bondage to some vice. And so that's another one of my favorites. There's nothing new under the sun, right? And so that's a good reminder because very often we think that our failure or our experience is somehow unique to us. And often our great ideas we think are unique, but that saying just keeps us grounded and I'd say humble. So
one of the ones from I was reading my kids the Little House on the Prairie books a while back, and one of the ones that always amazed me was that the Wilder family would go through some like harrowing experience where they're like all almost die or something terrible. And then Pa always just says with, a twinkle in his eye, if everyone's ever read those books, all's well that ends well. That's a good reminder, though, that how you finish is actually more important than how you begin. So things can be a disaster at first, but if they turn out well, it's still okay. And it just really showed their perspective on life. There's several others in the book that I can't recall at the moment, but sometimes those wise sayings can really help keep us grounded and remind us of important truths, even if at first they just feel like sayings that we've heard 1,000 times, but they really do have meaning to them.
Yeah, for sure. And I can think of those of us who are prone to laziness or sloth. I remember the first 10 times hearing a stitch in time saves 9.
Yes.
And I've been like, what does that mean? Like, I don't even understand this. Now my kids can say it, and they roll their eyes when I say a stitch in time saves 9, right? Because the idea of that one goes back to if something starts to rip, fix it now before it gets bigger, and then you've got this huge long rip. And so the same thing with little things in life is that if you require your kids or yourself to clean up after yourself, you're not going to end the day and look at a house that is just a tornado, a pigsty, a tornado run through. And so we have to remind ourselves of those things. If you let the dishes stacked up like I did when I was in college, and then once a week you look over and it's like, I don't have a dish left because I haven't watched any of them. That's the 9 that I didn't save, right? And so now you're going to spend 2 hours cleaning all these things.
It's procrastination.
Yeah.
I confess I struggle with procrastination sometimes. But the thing is, it always makes it worse. When you put things off, You don't answer one email. It soon turns into 10 emails that you need to answer, and that makes you feel even worse.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's better just be proactive and fix a problem before it gets worse.
That's right. So think about those sayings that your grandpa used to say. If you didn't have a grandpa that used to say them, Google them and find some that you like, and then obviously start living them. So
yeah. Well, our next skill is totally unrelated to that, but it's one that I personally love, and it's grilling with charcoal.
Yeah.
And in fact, I like the natural hardwood charcoal that's in the big random chunks rather than the neat bricks. Just feels, I don't know, it just makes me feel better about grilling wood that's actually identifiable as wood. But grilling with charcoal takes a little more skill than it does a gas grill. A gas grill, you can control the temperature very easily. You can control the distribution of the heat very easily. But with the charcoal grill, it actually takes a little more skill. You've got to let it heat up in the right way. You've got to evenly distribute that heat. And it can be challenging, especially if you're grilling something that takes a little bit longer, like smoking a rack of ribs or something like that. That can take a little more skill. So, but it's one that I really enjoy, and I think every man, even if you have a gas grill, you should at least know how to grill with charcoal.
That's right. Thanks for getting back to that. And if you don't have a charcoal grill, you should know how to use one. So I affirm everything you're stating, except when you're trying to if you're trying to smoke something. Those Kingston charcoal, make it so much easier because you can line them up and then you can control that heat. But the end result is I completely agree with you. I intentionally, when I was offered a housewarming gift, asked for a charcoal versus a propane grill. Yeah. I think the food tastes better. Yes, you definitely notice that. There is a certain sense of authenticity and having to start the fire yourself and get that charcoal to the perfect state. Honestly, if you get into steaks or if you get into grilling whole fish or these sort of things, it's almost essential to do it on a charcoal grill. So without sounding haughty or prideful or anything like that, it's the preferred, and I would say a gentleman's skill that you should have. You should also have it so that when you go to friends' barbecues and gatherings, you're not totally ignorant to the time it takes to heat up charcoal, 20 minutes or so, and then to evenly distribute it, and then the time it takes to, it's really a labor of love, right? These new Traeger grills, which don't get me wrong, I've tasted amazing food off of these Traeger grills. But basically, these pellet grills, you just put them in, you turn a dial, and you come back 6 hours later, and it's perfect, right? There's not really any sort of labor involved. There's no sort of, connection. I suppose the connection comes with the food after the fact, but there's really something with kind of doing, starting fire and cooking things over that flame.
And even if you have a gas grill, again, like sometimes when I go camping, there's no option, right? That's right? You have the little grills that they put by the campsite, and you got to know how to use that. Yeah. So it's a good skill to have.
So another skill, and this is something that we don't see often enough, and that is treating women with respect by opening the door for them.
Right.
Fathers, open the door for your daughters. Get in the habit of treating women with dignity. We talked about it on one of our previous episodes with Brad Miner, that there's a number of women who are annoyed or offended by that. But we are here to actually kind of buck that trend. And, the intent is not to offend women. The intent is to treat them with respect and dignity that they're due. And as such, opening the door for them, opening a door for a stranger, for it doesn't matter the age, young or old, a complete stranger or a close friend or your wife or your daughter, get in the habit as a gentleman to open the door for women.
Yeah. And, why is this a skill? Well, it's because it's something we have to practice.
Yeah.
There's been times when I haven't thought about it and I've let the door slam in someone's face and then I feel terrible afterwards. Right. And also, I will say, too, that I've opened the door for women hundreds of times, and I can only think 2 or 3 times when somebody's gotten upset about it.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the time, the woman's very appreciative. They're not used to being treated with respect. And so it's a skill that we need to develop. The skill being paying attention, and taking note, and then showing that woman that dignity.
Yeah.
And so it's something that we have to work at.
Yeah, and if we're being honest, I fail at it probably more times than I succeed. To what you're saying, I mean, it's easy for me to sit here and talk about opening the door for your daughters, but generally they're faster to the car, or I just show up to the car and I'm, my head is in a totally different space and I'm just jumping in. But their conscience is always there, and I appreciate you mentioning that ability to practice and work on it is something we work on and we encourage every man to work on. So,
number 4 would be very related: how to court a woman, or how to romance a woman, if you will. Whether or not if you're seeking a spouse, this is important. But once you're already married, like showing a woman and knowing how to treat a woman in a romantic way that's appropriate. Now, we're not talking about like sexually here, but write a love letter or bring a girl flowers. Like, every man should know how to do these gentlemanly things that show a woman respect and dignity in an affectionate way, to properly express affection in a way that isn't crude, but that shows them that you care about them and that you're genuinely want to express that in a way that's meaningful to them.
Yeah, and that the end response is not the reason why you're romancing them. I like that. And I was just thinking that, the point is not to instantly win her over. And basically, if you don't do that, you failed. Right. It's your gentlemanly nature is not dependent on the outcome or the reception of that well thought out plan or idea. Right. And at the time of this shooting of this episode here, my 11th wedding anniversary is tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. and I guess don't miss wedding anniversaries, just to add to this, because our wives still need to be pursued, and they deserve to be pursued, in this journey of life that we're on together. So,
but it's a skill, because a lot of guys, like, maybe they like a girl on their college campus or something. Yeah. And they don't know what to do. They don't know how to express that. And so they fumble around, or they say something really embarrassing, or know how to do that. Learn how. Yeah. Look it up if you don't know how. If no one ever taught you, look it up. And I think you'll feel so much more confident in those interactions with the opposite sex. But men need to know also how to keep dating their wives. I think this is really important. Take her on a date night. Buy her flowers randomly. Write her a love letter. Some of the great men of history, there's a book that I came across once that had all the love letters that the great men of history wrote to their wives. Incredible.
Beautiful.
Just beautiful expressions of affection and tenderness towards their wives. And these were guys that were like ruling nations and leading armies, but they knew how to show love and affection to their spouse. And we all need to know how to do that.
Yeah, my wife would be blown away if I hand wrote her a note. A note to self. So that's a really good one. So the next one, and we've talked about it in other episodes, but it's just so important, is waking up before your family, or practicing waking up consistently where you are acting and not reacting to the day.
Yes.
So having that set time at 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m., depending on when you are. I can think of a brother-in-law of mine, amazing gentleman, and he has to wake up at 5 a.m. every day so that he can get his prayer time in before his kids wake up.
Yes.
And that's so important in the example that it sets. Mm-hmm. Again, though, the example is not the reason that he does it. He does it because of the virtue of waking up early and being able to have time to order your thoughts and order your time to God and even plan your day. So I had a spiritual director that always used to talk to me about the importance of, regardless of how your day ends, don't let your day start on the wrong foot.
Right.
And so getting up at that consistent time, right? So if you get to bed at 10 p.m. and you have to wake up at 5 a.m., great. If you get to bed at midnight, still force yourself to wake up at 5 a.m. Stay consistent for that day.
Right. Well, you were talking about earlier about aphorisms. One that I heard growing up all the time was, begin as you intend to proceed. And oftentimes how we begin the day sets the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So if we wake up, we have 5 minutes to get out the door before work, we're going to be panicked, we're all in disarray, we're rushing throughout our day, and it sets the whole tone for the day. But if you wake up calm, peaceful, prayer, meditation, planning your day ahead, it's going to be a completely different outcome. So begin as you intend to proceed. Take the day, take control of the day early, and things will go well for you for the rest of the day.
And I was thinking about, I don't know, metaphor and analogy, but I read a spiritual director once. I can't remember who it was, but he talked about that setting time out for Christ in the morning, that regardless of the waves and the cacophony of life that's around you, and we all know the noise that we are inundated with, your sails will be undisturbed.
Yes.
If you set out that time for Christ in the morning, right? Yeah. So focus on yourself and chart that course, and regardless of what happens throughout the day, it's going to be better than if you woke up at 7:30 because you hit your alarm 3 times and now you've only got 15 minutes to jump in the shower and get out. It's even worse if you have a family and now you're just blowing them off. So all of those things, there's really nothing but virtue in practicing waking up before your family.
And that leads very naturally into kind of the next skill that we want to talk about, is praying consistently and daily. There's something so important about consistency in the spiritual life. And there's got tongue-tied there, but especially when it comes to doing things at the same time.
Yeah.
You look at monks' schedules. They pray the same hours every time, every day, over and over and over again. They repeat the same cycles like year after year. And every time you're doing that, it's kind of like breathing. Like it breeds strength. It breeds power in the spiritual life, consistency. And I would say that one prayer said consistently is better than 100 devotions done randomly.
Yeah.
Where if you are faithful in saying maybe one Our Father every day before you begin your day, or your morning offering every day, and it just becomes a part of who you are. It sinks deep into your soul. It's much better than, I'm going to pray a rosary one day, and then maybe I'll pray literally the hours the next day, and, maybe I'll do a litany to the Sacred Heart the next day, and it's all random and scattershot. Yeah. That has a very weak effect on your spiritual life. Yeah. So being consistent is so much more effective. So pray consistently and daily.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add that you've reached a level in life when you are on vacation, speaking from personal experience, and you don't pray because something threw you off and you missed your morning prayer, and that pain of conscience and that guilt of having missed your prayer time, and really kind of that feeling of loss is there. We want to get to that place. And I will be direct and honest in saying that this is one of the things that I struggled with the most. I had actually 3 spiritual directors that were encouraging me to pray, to the point where one of them was like, just 5 minutes a day, pick a picture of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and say, Jesus, I love you. I want to learn how to love you more. And just say that. And he was like just start somewhere. And this was through early in college and beyond. It was just something I had never developed. I always had my evening prayers all throughout middle school and high school, but that morning prayer, that contemplative prayer, that working on that conversation, right? Christ wants to be our friend. He is our friend.
Yeah.
Christ, loves us beyond all else. And if we don't spend time, we can't grow in that relationship and that friendship with him who gave his all for us.
Exactly.
So another one that the digital age has really caused to go in utter disarray and chaos and is completely out the window is how to have a logical argument or debate with somebody.
Yes.
So it's interesting. We see these individuals like Ben Shapiro or, Michael Knowles, and they have such an ability to debate and to form logical thoughts that it's like, it seems superhuman to us today.
Yes.
Because we've just lost the ability to recognize fallacies, right? If you don't know what an ad hominem attack is, you should first learn how to say it 10 times fast now. First look it up, ad hominem attack. They're everywhere, attacking someone's emotions.
Right.
We experience them, you and I, in the digital space. Yes. And but the thing is that if you can't make a logical, cogent, consistent, formed argument or thought, then what else do we have to turn to but our emotions? And in that case, it's whoever speaks louder is stronger and whoever speaks softer is weaker. And that's not the case at all.
Yes, exactly. And I think part of this, learning how to debate well, is how to listen well. And this is something that we struggle with because in the heat of a debate, we just want to win. But really consider what someone's actually saying. And then if there's flaws in their argument, point them out. But at least take the time to listen and understand what they're really trying to say. A lot of times if you do this, you'll find that even if they're misguided in some ways, there might be a good intention underlying it, or there might be a perspective you hadn't considered before. And a lot of guys are like, no, I am 100% right. There's nothing I have to learn. Sometimes you can learn something by listening. You'd be surprised. But beyond that, once you've listened and understood, then, again, like you're saying, respond in a carefully considered manner. Take time to form your thoughts. Don't just blast back with some heated rhetoric that ends up inflaming the argument worse. But make sure that your response is logical, that it's coherent. And if you don't know what logic is, well, look it up. Again, learn some syllogisms or something where you learn how to form a coherent thought in response to what they're saying. Now, a lot of times, people don't like logic and they'll get very angry. But at least you'll have the confidence that you responded in a measured, careful, thoughtful manner. You heard them out, you heard what they had to say, and you considered it, and then you responded. People may not always respond properly. That's their responsibility. Your responsibility is to take control of yourself and make sure that this isn't descending into heated emotions that really go nowhere and persuade no one.
Yeah, I had a great professor, Dennis Turner, who taught a graduate and doctoral level class on medieval theology. And there was a lot of individuals in the class that were atheist or Episcopalian ministers, and a lot of people really intelligent, but with an axe to grind, right? He was a devout Catholic, but it was just a grad level class at a secular university. And he had this power of listening that made me imagine better what talking to like a Thomas Aquinas or somebody like that would have been like. Because he could listen to somebody, pause for a moment, repeat back what they stated with calm, and then dissect it and break down all the errors and their logic, but done so with not emotion, not polemic rhetoric or something that just fiery to try and make a point. And the class was a pass-fail class. You just had to write a paper, 15-page plus paper at the end of the semester. But everybody showed up to that class every week for different reasons, I'm sure. Some to try and prove him wrong, and me just to really, marvel in his ability to
Right.
listen and to respond. So I wasn't thinking that until you mentioned that, but what a great point. So the next one, totally off topic, totally off this conversation, and something that I feel very strongly about is that, and you do too, we're both into cars. I admitted that I've been watching Formula One and stuff like that, but every man needs to know how to change the oil in his car and change a flat tire.
Mm-hmm.
My brain goes in multiple different directions, but how can you help a mother with 2 kids stranded on the side of the road with a pop tire unless you know how to change a tire?
Exactly.
I have broken more lug nuts than I can count.
Right.
I have bent wrenches by doing things incorrectly. Again, your quality or your ability tested through perseverance and through the furnace of failure.
Right.
But I feel very strongly that every man needs to know how to change his tire. There was a neighbor of mine that I admire. He's a great man. I like him a lot. But I was floored when I was changing the tires in my car, and he came over and said, I don't even think I know how to do that. I don't know how to change a tire. And he was like in his 50s. And I was just like, I'd still respect him, but that was shocking to me. And so we get to talk about it in this episode because we have that ability. And I would strongly encourage every man to learn how to change a tire. And really quick, go on YouTube, learn how to change a tire, loosen up the lug nuts while the tire is on the ground before you jack it up so it's not spinning around while you're trying to take advantage of it. Learn how to do those on YouTube, and then just test it out on your car. Tire doesn't have to be flat for you to learn how to change a tire.
Sure,
so.
Yeah. Well, and an example of this skill coming in handy is for three years or so, we lived out by Clear Creek Abbey in Oklahoma, and it's lots of dirt roads, country roads, and my wife was on the way back from a function at the Abbey and was driving on these dirt roads, and I was at work at the time, but she called me, and there's barely any cell signal out there, and she was breaking up, and she's like, flat tire, like, I need your help. And so it was like 110-degree day, so hot, the van was running out of gas. It was just a disaster all the way around, but flat tire, I had to race out there and fix her tire because everyone was so hot in the car, and if I didn't know how to do that, the nearest tow truck was miles and miles away. It would have taken them forever to get there. So anyway, I changed that tire, saved the family. But I'm glad I knew how to do that.
Saved money.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so, my wife got stranded on a overpass once because of a pop tire. And she called me up, and similar situation. And it was a very precarious situation because she was on an overpass and there was cars flying by. So I first called the cops so that they would, she was with the kids and show up. And we showed up, and the cop didn't know how to change the tire. So I showed up after him, and I was very grateful that he had cut it off. Mm-hmm. Praise God for cops and for the police department. But he had angled his car so that nobody was going to, run into my wife and children. But he didn't actually know how to change the tire. So I'm not saying that he should have had to change the tire, but I showed up, and he was just standing there, and I quickly jumped out and changed the tire. And again, if I had never done that, I think both of us would probably have just, even if we had never done it, like forced ourselves to try and figure it out there for our family. But and then changing the oil in your car, that's another good habit to get into, right? It's greasy, literally. It's messy. I can be honest that there's few things in life that I have had more foils and issues with changing the oil. Every single time I think, this should be easy, I strip the oil cap, I grab the wrong wrench and I screw it up, it's on there too tight, or the oil filter, I've got the wrong size over filter, and I figure that after I've drained the oil, and now I have to find a different car to go back to the store. And as difficult as that is, I still save a lot of money, but I still am comfortable. I understand the worth of an oil and car, and I also understand the importance of changing it regularly and can do that. So.
Exactly. Well, that leads to our next skill that men should know. And it's one I admit I'm not good at. And I'm working on getting better at it. But it's negotiating and haggling.
Yeah.
Buying a vehicle, buying a house sometimes, although that's getting harder to do these days. But still, you need to make an offer. But just knowing how to negotiate is an important skill for men, because as family men especially, we often make big purchases, big expensive purchases that maybe you don't make as much when you're single. But buying a van, or buying something for your house, or getting a quote on a roof repair, all these things, you got to know how to stand your ground and say, this is what I'm going to pay, and I'm not paying any more than that.
I agree. And this is something that I actually found that I love doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, here's the point. In first world country, we don't ever haggle or negotiate regularly. And so I was in Thailand. I was a sophomore in college, and I was in Thailand playing the trumpet. And I was with another trumpet player, but he was from Colombia. And you haggle and negotiate everything. Like the bottle of water at the gas station, you negotiate. It's 12 cents. No, I'll pay you 7 cents. Oh, 8 cents. Yeah. And so I was incredibly uncomfortable. We were there for over a week. And the first couple times, and he was laughing at me, right? There's nothing like another guy laughing at you to make you like, I'm going to learn how to do this.
Yes.
And so we would go to these bazaars, that just had the different stands with little trinkets and knickknacks and some nice things, some nice scarves and stuff like that, And so we talked about it with him, and it got to the point where I was like, something was so cheap in everything was cheap in Thailand. But, like a scarf that would cost $40 over here was like list price over there, $4. And he would haggle down to $2. And I asked him, and I was like, why would you do that? $4 is like nothing to us. And he said, well, but it's the principle of it. Like it costs them 10 cents.
Right.
And he was like, it's the principle of the negotiating. And so I was like, oh, okay. And I got really into it. And then now it was like when I came back to America, anytime I could negotiate, like with a car or something, I'll never forget. There was like a used car lot. I was buying an old, we had Dave Ramsey, and we had sold a car, and we were having to buy a car outright out of pocket. And so I only had about $2,500 to buy a car outright. Yeah. So I went to this used car lot, and it was good, old 1996 Lexus, and we started haggling. He wanted $4,000 for it, and I said, I'll give you $2,000. He was, oh, that's silly. I can't do $2,000, and I could never go that low. And he's like, I'll give it to you for $3,500, and I just said $2,500, which was, all I could pay. And he said no. And I said, hey, I understand. You have to, I also knew that car had been on the lot for like 2 weeks, and people like to move cars, used car lots. And so I said to him, hey, I understand you're running a business, you need to make money. And I said, I don't want you to lose money. I said, so here's my card. And if it doesn't move in a week or two and you need somebody to buy it, you got my offer of $2,500. And I stood up, and he said, fine, $2,500. I was blown away. It was one of the proudest moments of negotiating. So yeah, I agree. Every man should learn how to do that and not be afraid to do it, right? The end result is, so maybe you can't walk away like I could, and maybe you won't get the better, which has also happened to me on a Toyota Sienna that I tried buying. I tried haggling, and they said, we've got 6 other guys lined up to view this car. Like, someone's going to buy this van today. Right. And that was a whole nother world. So yeah, there's certain echelons of cars. I'll say, like, once you get over $15,000 for a car, people aren't really to negotiate. Yes, exactly. So anyway, so that's a good one.
Yeah, and that's a natural segue into kind of our next skill, and that's just managing your finances in general. again, just especially as if you feel called to be a family man, you feel like God's calling you, if you're a single person, to the vocation of marriage. Married men know things are incredibly expensive. Like I said, we go grocery shopping and I look at that receipt and sometimes my eyes just pop out of my head. I'm like, how did we spend that much on these groceries?
Yeah,
like that makes no sense. And you look for ways to cut corners, you look for ways to save money. But the point is, life is expensive. And if you don't have a basic handle on how to manage finances, it's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
You're going to find yourself getting deeper and deeper into debt. You're going to find yourself unable to pay just the basic bills. So learning how to manage finances, how to have a budget.
Yeah, exactly.
How to track your expenses can be so important. Checking your bank account 20 times a day is not a good financial management method. Right. Be a little more proactive than that. I did live that way for a while, and it got me into big trouble.
Yeah.
And so it was an important skill for me to learn early on in my life to manage money well. And just something like having an emergency fund can be so helpful.
Oh, for sure.
So helpful.
It just was for me. I will say that not every man comes by this from the same way either, right? So some of us are natural savers.
Yes.
Some of us are natural by habit spenders. And so for me, I was a natural saver. And I did. I saved and saved and saved. I loved it. It was a bit of Scrooge, if I'm being honest. I loved seeing $200 in the bank account, $300 when I was young. And then, when I hit $1,000, I was like mesmerized. I must have been, middle school or something. And I had $1,000 and I was, an altar boy for weddings, and I did lawn services, and I just saved everything. But then I got married, and that doesn't happen like that. Like you have to manage. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I wasn't necessarily managing my budget as much as I was comfortable and enjoying watching money, grow in my bank account. And that's what it was for me, but it wasn't managing a budget.
Yeah.
Then I got married, and it wasn't just me, and managing a budget is so incredibly important. And if you go months without looking at your budget, it's like death by paper cuts.
Oh, yes.
Like the amount of little things that you spend
goes so fast.
But if you stay consistent, and this is an absolute practice that men have to get better at and work on throughout their lives.
And it takes a lot of weight off your wife's shoulders. I mean, to be honest, my wife is better managing those little things than I am as far as tracking expenses and stuff like that. It comes more naturally to her, I would say. But I am taking on that responsibility, and it's something I had to learn. But now she doesn't stress about it, and because she knows that I'm handling it. And she feels confident knowing that we can get what we need when we need it, because I'm managing the money. And it makes me feel better knowing that I'm providing for her and making sure her needs are met, and the needs of our children too. So it's an important skill.
Keyword providing. I like that. So another one, number 11 on our list of 20, if you guys are keeping track, we haven't been. So number 11 is how to give a speech. And you never know when something like this is going to come up, right? A very common one is having to toast a married couple, or having to give a best man speech, or these sort of things. So if you are, in the unfortunate case, a eulogy, right? So these things come up, and being able to give a good speech is so vital to the life of a man and a gentleman. And so we encourage you to, I do by listening to Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh my goodness, best orator.
That's right. Listening to some of these great orators and some of these great speakers, and from the past, Martin Luther King Jr., an amazing a speaker. If you haven't listened to his speeches, content one thing, but execution another thing. And so we're not saying we need to be Teddy Roosevelt or Martin Luther King Jr. or things like that, but being able to comfortably not go into awkward places. I'm thinking of bachelor speeches, for your, as a groomsman or as the best man giving a speech. not going into awkward situations of having to tell jokes that people shouldn't know about, or, having to go down, and fumbling all over yourself. You don't feel good about that. They kind of feel awkward, right? So, that's one instance in one situation. But being able to give a speech, you never know when you're going to be promoted in work, and you're going to have to give a speech to your employees or individuals underneath you. So spending time learning is really important.
And I just want to make one point around public speaking of any kind, whether it's a groomsman speech or something else, or a presentation at work. One of my biggest pet peeves is that microphones have made people not know how to project. If they don't have a mic, or even if they do have a mic, in a lot of cases, they're just mumbling, they're talking, they're so quiet. No, project, speak to the back of the room, not the front of the room. Speak to the back of the room, speak loudly, speak confidently, don't blast people, but at the same time, make your voice heard. It's so important when giving a speech. So know how to do that. Absolutely.
And you remind me of a comedian who was talking about the importance, and he argues it's more important to know how to project than actually what you're saying, like how to stand and how to project. And he used the example of the our Star Spangled Banner, and he was like, 70% of Americans don't know the Star Spangled Banner, but if you are projecting like you have it all down and confident, and he was like, and you are emotive and you are moving, he's like, nobody realizes you don't know the words. And so that's a funny point and a good one too.
So another one that's really about confidence and how you present yourself is know how to shake hands. It can be very disconcerting when you shake hands with somebody and it's just like, just limp. Shake hands properly, firmly. You don't have to crush their hand. I've had people try to crush my hand. That's not good either. But have a firm handshake. Not too limp, but not too firm to the point where they're squirming. You just want it to be firm and confident.
I agree. And also where you're positioning your hand too, that says a lot. You as a counselor and stuff, you understand the psychology of this, right? So if you are the guy who always goes on top to give handshakes, that's uncomfortable for the other person, right? It's actually not gentlemanly.
It's like trying to show dominance.
Correct. It's trying to show alpha dominance, right? And so...
and you also don't want to do the fingertips.
No, you don't want to do the fingertips. It's uncomfortable. And the fingertips too get you when you don't intentionally, you've just got a normal firm handshake and they grab the fingertips, you don't know what to do. It's like you feel like you're going to break their fingers when you're not showing like some, Andre the Giant sort of strength. You're just trying to give a normal handshake. So practice handshakes. Another important thing is the Heimlich maneuver. So we're not here to talk all about CPR and things like that, but every man, again, going back to the beginning of what I was saying about being capable and competent in any situation, if somebody is choking and nobody is responding, you can be the first to respond when you know how to give the Heimlich maneuver. And that's really important. And I understand that, like for little kids and the Heimlich maneuver, there's new approaches and things like that. But nevertheless, know how to do the Heimlich maneuver, know how to start. I had one where I, with my daughter, she was old enough, I attempted to do the Heimlich maneuver. She was choking. And then, and that didn't work. So spinning her around by her feet did.
Wow.
So, the action's there, but make sure that you've spent time learning it. Go to a CPR class, learn how to do these things.
It's a good skill because they're in a situation like that, they're going to be looking for somebody.
Yeah.
And if nobody knows, it could not end well.
Yeah.
So it's a good skill to have.
Yeah. So another one that we like to talk about, and we're not advocating for violence, but you have to know how to protect yourself. You have to know how to throw a punch. You have to know how to take a punch. I'm not encouraging men to go out and practice taking punches. But we can think of Captain America when he was, in the movie, when he was scrawny and stuff like that, where not only did he know how to take a punch, but he also knew how to throw one. And there is a degree of art form to throwing a punch correctly. And very often I like to bring this up because there's the archetype of warrior within us men.
Yeah.
Whether we are 5'5" or whether we are 6'5", we still all have this innate desire to protect.
Mm-hmm.
And this archetype, and I use warrior as Brad Miner calls out. And one of those things is knowing how to handle yourself if a situation should arise, right? So we always choose the path of least conflict when we're talking about this. Like, we're not talking about, but if somebody horribly offends your wife, if somebody attacks your child, I mean, there's tons of situations that these could be presented in. And so, but having the confidence is really something that I value, and I helps men grow in confidence as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I this goes back to that theme of just being competent, just having this basic tool belt of skills that you can use in all the different situations of life. And yes, knowing how to fight is not a bad thing for a man to know. It's a very good thing, in fact. That doesn't mean that we turn to violence, like you're saying, as a first resort. It should generally be a last resort after we've tried everything else. But again, women and children, who are they going to be looking to defend them? They're going to be looking to you.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So know how to handle yourself. Know how to handle that situation. Doesn't mean you have to be a martial arts expert,
right?
Or a Navy SEAL. But just know the basics.
Yeah, agreed. So next one on our list of things that we think every man should know how to do, and this is personal to both of us, is drive a stick shift. It's harder to do these days, right? Because cars just aren't being made with stick shifts, or they've got paddle shifters or things like that. But there is something, again, going to the authentic, going to the connection, right? So we get these Teslas that are coming out, right, that can drive themselves. Right? We are so disconnected from our car and from the machine that we are putting ourselves into. I think it's dangerous. I also think it's very, contrary to the attention we should be giving in these situations. But when I learned how to drive a stick shift, there was not only a sense of accomplishment, but it's also come in handy at least 3 other times in life, both in necessity, but also in pleasure. So in necessity, I was going, and I can think of a time when a friend of mine got into a real bad accident and needed me to drive his car home, and he had a stick shift. If I didn't know how to drive a stick shift, we would have been paying for a tow truck or something like that. I can also think of a pleasure that a friend of mine, her former boyfriend, this is in college, owned a Toyota Supra with 540 horsepower, and he offered to let me drive it. But if I didn't know how to drive a standard, I wouldn't have been able to experience, going from my Honda Civic with like 110 horsepower to something like this. And so I think there's a skill in there that we should all learn how to.
Yeah, well, and like you said, it's a wonderful connection to just the mechanism of your vehicle.
Yeah.
There's all this electronic stuff is really outsourcing our ability to control our vehicle. And a lot of times it does improve the driving experience, we're not going to lie. It does make things faster or more responsive. But at the same time, there's just something really wonderful about feeling those gears click, and feeling the clutch popping in and out. And I really enjoy it. My car is an automatic right now, but I've owned lots of sticks, and honestly, I prefer it. Even if it makes the car a second or so slower when you're accelerating, it's fine. It's more the pleasure of feeling that connection to the vehicle. A transmission is an amazing thing, and when you feel like you're in control of that, it can be very enjoyable.
Yeah, so. I don't know, when you went from stick shift to that automatic, if you found your hand like looking for something to do.
Oh yeah, my foot hitting the floor,
exactly.
Like looking for that clutch.
I've had that experience. I'm like, well, I can only press the AC button so many times, So I agree. I've only got automatics right now, but very blessed to have driven a stick and known how to drive one now. Number 16 in our list of things that a man should know how to do is clean your drain pipes. And what do I mean by that? But yes, it's part of home ownership. It's part of life. You have to know how to clean out the guck and the hair in the different drain pipes in your house. You could either learn how to do that yourself in maybe 10 minutes flat, or you can pay someone $200 to do it.
Right.
And so I was watching this really great handyman on YouTube, and he was talking about how every day he has one chore like this. He said that takes me 10 minutes to clean it out. They have to pay me $200 bottom. He's like, I think he said the lowest one is changing out the battery on a fire detector. And he said that, it happens very frequently that people will call me, men as well will call me because they've never known how to touch one. And so I just have to go over, change out a battery. But not what I'm talking about here, but learn how to disconnect the screws on the pipe, right? It's not difficult nowadays. Pull it out. If a wedding ring gets lost down there, you know how to find it in that trap. And so I strongly encourage men to know how to do that.
Yeah, and hey, sometimes it can be a little gross, but as the longer I've been a dad and dealt with sick kids throwing up everywhere, changing diapers, the less my gross factor has kicked in at all.
Right.
But yeah, get your hands dirty a little bit. Get that pipe wrench out and take it apart. It's actually not as hard as you'd think.
Agreed.
A lot of times guys are just intimidated by some of this basic stuff because their dad never showed them how to do it or whatever. But once you actually do it, a lot of these things aren't as hard as you'd think. It just, it takes a little bit of effort, but it's not that bad. So just learn how to do it if you don't know how. It'll save you a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. So number 17, one that we both have experiences of, and we actually talked about earlier today, is shaving. Right? So knowing how to shave correctly and appropriately, knowing how to use a straight razor, and knowing how to just keep yourself trim and right. I liked what you said on the last one about a father, right? And so very often we didn't have fathers. I did, but very often I know a lot of my friends that didn't have fathers to show them how to do these things. But again, knowing how to shave is important. Yeah,
well, and there's different ways to shave, right? So there's, of course, the electric razors that everybody uses these days, but there's also, you mentioned this straight razor, which honestly, I'm going to admit, those are a little intense to use because one mistake and you got a big gash in your cheek. Yeah. But knowing how to do it properly is really cool. Yeah. I mean, there's no experience in the world like a straight razor shave. I mean, if you find a barber who knows how to do it, or you learn how to do it yourself, it's amazing. But you can also use a safety razor, which is a lot less likely to cut yourself. But they're also not the Gillette, razors that you buy at Walmart either. It's still a really wonderful experience. You get the water all hot. You got your soap. You get your little brush and the soap and the hot water, and you lather up. And even if you have a beard, you can still clean up your beard, the edges of your beard, with a safety razor. And it feels great.
It's much easier, too, than a Gillette. Like, the Gillette has the little plastic things on the side, so you can't get as close, or you can't see how far you're going down. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that with a straight, even a safety razor.
Yeah, and it takes a little more time, but it's a really, luxurious experience. It feels great. So know how to do it, even if you don't do it all the time. Know how to do it, and I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah. So this next one, you foreshadowed early on in the episode, but I don't even know if you meant to. And that is handwriting letters.
Yes.
So not only for courting women or your wife, but it's becoming a lost art, which is so interesting, right? Because we had to learn cursive in school.
Right.
We had to learn all these things. And nowadays, men don't know how to, take pen to paper and not make 1,000 mistakes and have to get whiteout all over the place. It's just become a lost art. So,
well, and even learning how to express yourself in a way that's a little more articulate than how you'd express yourself in an email or something. But just a thank you note for somebody who was really hospitable to you and let you stay with them while you were on vacation, or things like that, where thank you note shows intentionality. Anyone can fire off an email, but taking the extra time, finding a stamp, finding a card, writing it out carefully, it all takes an extra level of intentionality, and that extra intentionality shows extra appreciation.
Yeah.
So knowing how to do it, it doesn't mean you have to do it all the time, but knowing how to do it and doing it occasionally is a really good skill for a man.
It is. I liked how you started small, a thank you note, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was stating it right there, I'm sure like many of our listeners, you're thinking like, yeah, a full handwritten note, right? Foreshadowing to, a love note or something like that. But you're exactly right. Start small with a thank you note, or start with a journal.
Mm-hmm.
Journal in the evening, write a couple interesting things that happened to your day, learn how to tell stories to, in your journal. But these sort of things can really help us progress in that ability and confidence to write.
Expressing yourself. I think it's something that's so important to know what you're thinking and know how to say it in a way that's coherent and meaningful. I think that's really important.
Yeah, agreed.
Next one is one I'm really excited about. It's like knowing how to tie a bow tie, or really knowing how to tie a tie in general. I don't think any full-grown man should ever wear a clip-on, whether that's a bow tie or a regular tie. Should know how to tie a tie. Maybe know multiple ways of tying a tie, because there are multiple ways.
Yes.
But really, a bow tie, I think, knowing how to do that is really cool.
I agree.
I have some bow ties. I don't wear them all the time, but I do like wearing them occasionally. And it's really fun to tie them. It can be kind of tricky sometimes. Sometimes you got to try a couple times to get it right. But it's really fun to be able to do that and to know how. Not a lot of people do these days. But also, there's times when, you're going to a wedding, or you're in a wedding or something like that, where you need to wear a bow tie with your tuxedo. And again, you don't want to wear a clip-on. Like, just get an actual bow tie. You'll feel better knowing, even if nobody else does, knowing that you tied it yourself.
Yeah, and in the symphony orchestra where I play, I would say that there are 2 people in the orchestra that actually tie their own bow tie. Everybody wears clip-ons. And, the opportunity is there. But you look like this superhuman. You look like this, Ubermensch or something, because you could tie a bow tie. So, and it's noticeable. A clip-on tie, even one that wraps around and clips in the front, like that, versus actually tying it, it looks completely different.
Yes.
So I completely agree. So, last but certainly not least, and as you guys have noticed, we didn't go into like survivalist techniques, like how to start a fire without matches, or how to filter water, out of a eucalyptus leaf or plant or something like that. That's not what we were talking about. We're talking about real practical things that men statistically will need to know how to do in their lives. And so our last one, kind of in line with tying a bow tie, is how to wear a suit. And all I'd like to say is dress for how you look and your body size. Don't dress for what you want your body size to be, right? So wearing a suit should make every man, regardless of how tall, how short, how large, how skinny he is, look better. And it can do that when it's fitted appropriately.
Yes.
And so you should know how to do that. You should also know how to wear a suit, how to handle yourself in a suit. But we're going to actually talk about that in another episode, so I won't go any further.
One way to just wear a suit properly is a lot of times guys just leave them flapping open. When you stand up, button your suit, the top button of your suit. It's a very simple thing. But it makes you look a lot better. Makes you feel more confident. And then if some people wear a vest underneath, there's different rules for that. Yeah. So just familiarize yourself with kind of the basic ground rules of what's appropriate and what's not. And you'll feel better. You'll feel more confident.
Agreed. I'm a fan of a pocket square too, right? And it shouldn't be the identical pattern or color as your tie. It should complement your tie or your shirt, or even your jacket for that matter. But there's a lot of little fun things that you can do with a suit. I suppose for those of you who don't own a suit, that's where you should start.
Get one.
A suit. Yes. And we'll talk about that on another day. So, for our nightcap, it is another skill, a skill that your boys are working on now and learning at getting better. And Oddly enough, my daughters are 2, not to the degree that your boys are. But if you'd like to share with us the experience that you have of chess.
Yeah. Well, I think every man should know how to play chess. It's a great game. They call it the game of kings. I think it's a very gentlemanly game. It's got ancient roots. I think one of the earliest chess sets they found was from like 800 years ago or something. It goes way back.
Yeah.
And it's a game of strategy. It's a game. It's part art, part skill, or part science. And it really challenges you to think. I'm not a great chess player, but I enjoy it. And I think that it's very enjoyable to get together with some friends and play a little chess. Like I think it's something that that is a great skill for men to know. My boys again are really into it right now, and they're learning all they can about it. But it really pushes you to learn to see things in a different way, strategize a little bit. So I think it's just it's a lot of fun, and I think every man would benefit from knowing it.
I agree, and I think so. We've gone through 21 skills. If you include perseverance at the beginning and starting your own blog or something like that, 22. But there's so much to life. There's so much to life that we can enjoy and we can take advantage of. But we often get lost in the noise, and we often get lost in the binge watching of Netflix or series and things like that. And we allow these skills to pass us by, to do them. So we both encourage you in growing in holiness to learn to produce, learn to create, learn to be active and not always passive or reactive to things.
Right. I love Saint Benedict's motto of ora et labora. Yes, the spiritual life is prayer, but there's also action required. And even the holiest monks are out there weeding their garden, as well as praying and reading their books. And as Catholic gentlemen, we're called to develop ourselves, to learn skills, to act in the world, and doing that in a prayerful way, learning these things they develop natural virtue, but approached in the right way, they can also help us learn supernatural virtue. And that's something that anything can be a rung on the ladder to heaven. So take these things seriously, learn them, and you'll be a better man for it.
Yeah, and thank you, Sam. I mean, it's as good for our listeners as it is for us to remind ourselves of these things. So as we remind every man who watches or listens to our episode at the end,
be a man, be a saint.